The story of Enoch is one of the most mysterious and inspiring accounts in all of Scripture. While his name appears only briefly in the book of Genesis, the words written about him carry a depth that echoes through the ages. Genesis chapter 5 verse 24 tells us simply, "And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him." These few words conceal a wonder too great to ignore. Enoch lived in such closeness with the Creator that death itself did not touch him. Instead, he was taken up, crossing from earth into heaven, a testimony that fellowship with God is stronger than the grave. To walk with God is not a casual description. It speaks of a life lived in deep communion, in trust and obedience, where every step of the journey is shaped by faith. In a world filled with corruption and violence, Enoch remained set apart, not by his own strength, but by the presence of the one he followed. His life reminds us that intimacy with God is possible even in the darkest of times, and that such a walk carries a reward that goes beyond imagination. What makes Enoch even more fascinating is that his visions, preserved in writings outside of the familiar canon, reveal journeys through the very structure of heaven itself. These revelations are not gentle tales meant to comfort alone. They stir the heart with both fear and hope. Enoch saw terrifying realities of rebellion, judgment, and eternal separation, yet also glimpsed gardens of paradise, angelic worship, and the throne of the Almighty. His journey is a map of eternity, both unsettling and breathtaking, designed to awaken us to the reality that life on earth is only the beginning. The question arises, why was Enoch chosen to see such things? Perhaps because his walk with God was not distant or occasional, but consistent and faithful. To him, the veil between the seen and unseen grew thin, and he was permitted to step into mysteries reserved for eternity. His story invites us to consider our own walk with God, whether we live merely for the passing world, or whether we live in anticipation of what lies beyond. Enoch's life is a reminder that faith is more than belief in words. It is a way of walking, a companionship with the Creator that changes everything. To know his story is to be reminded that eternity is not a distant idea, but a reality pressing upon us even now. The visions he received were not for him alone, but for every generation, that we might take them to heart, learn from them, and be prepared for the glory and judgment that awaits. Before we continue through the heavens Enoch saw, I want to encourage you to take a moment to support this journey. If you find these kinds of videos meaningful, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every response helps this message reach more people, and it also lets us know that you want more content like this. Your support helps keep these timeless stories alive and accessible for all who seek inspiration and truth. When Enoch crossed the threshold into the first heaven, his soul encountered a realm both familiar and unfamiliar. It was not yet the dazzling radiance of the higher places, but neither was it bound by the limits of earth. The first heaven appeared as an expanse of luminous sky, stretching far beyond the horizon, yet alive with a presence that could not be mistaken for mere atmosphere. The light there seemed to carry intention, as though every beam whispered of mysteries hidden beyond. Enoch realized that what people call the heavens when they look upward from earth is only a faint reflection of something deeper, a layered reality that presses close yet remains veiled. The first heaven served as the boundary between mortal life and the eternal order. It was like standing at a threshold where the known gives way to the unknown, and where human understanding falters in the face of infinite possibility. For Enoch, this was a place that taught humility. He could see further than ever before, but he also knew that the veil was not yet fully lifted. To glimpse even a portion of divine reality was enough to change him, to unsettle his mind, and to expand his faith. This vision was not meant to overwhelm, but to prepare. The first heaven revealed just enough to open the heart to awe, while still concealing what the soul might not yet be ready to endure. It taught that revelation often comes in measures, layer by layer, so that the soul may be strengthened to receive more. To be shown too much at once would be unbearable, yet to be shown nothing would leave the heart without hope. The first heaven balanced between these two extremes, a doorway half open, inviting trust. Enoch understood that creation itself was designed to reveal this truth. The sky, the stars, the movements of clouds and light are not accidents of nature, but living signs that point beyond themselves. They are the visible reminders of an invisible reality. Just as the horizon always stretches further than the eye can reach, so too does the eternal extend beyond the grasp of human thought. The first heaven reminded him that every upward glance is an invitation to faith. At the same time, the veil unsettled him. To stand before it was to realize how fragile life truly is. The earth seems solid, yet the heavens above it are vast and unknowable. In that vastness, Enoch felt his own smallness, but also his belonging. He understood that humans are not abandoned within creation, but placed within it with purpose, their lives woven into the larger fabric of eternity. The first heaven teaches that faith is not blind, but visionary. It does not see all things clearly, yet it sees enough to walk forward. To believe is to stand at the veil and to step through, trusting that beyond the horizon lies a reality far greater than what is presently known. This is the lesson the first heaven imparted to Enoch and to all who would hear his testimony. As he looked into this expanse, he realized that the veil was not only something separating earth from heaven, but also a reflection of the human heart. Each person carries within them a veil between what they see and what they cannot yet see, between doubt and trust, between fear and hope. The first heaven revealed that life itself is a constant meeting with the veil, a call to step forward into deeper trust. In this way, the first heaven was not only a place, but also a message. It reminded Enoch, and it reminds all who listen to his vision, that the journey into the eternal does not begin with overwhelming glory or consuming fire, but with a simple threshold, an invitation to believe that what lies beyond is real. As Enoch was lifted from the first heaven into the second, the brightness gave way to shadow, and the peace of the veil shifted into dread. In this realm, he saw angels who had fallen from their place of glory, beings once radiant, now confined in chains of darkness. They were not free to move, nor to rise again, but remained imprisoned, awaiting the day when judgment would be completed. Their sight alone was enough to send shivers into the soul, for it revealed the weight of rebellion in its starkest form. The second heaven was heavy with silence, not the silence of peace, but the silence of defeat. The angels who had once sung in brightness now remained hushed, their voices extinguished by their disobedience. Enoch saw how pride had distorted them, how their rebellion against the divine order had stripped away their light and replaced it with shadow. They were not rulers of chaos, as they once desired, but captives of it. Their very chains declared that disobedience never leads to true freedom, but only to deeper bondage. This vision was not given to terrify without reason. It spoke of a reality that runs through both heaven and earth. Humanity faces the same temptation as those angels once faced, the temptation to rise above limits, to seize control apart from God, to imagine that disobedience could bring greater life. Yet Enoch's vision showed the futility of that path. The chains were not simply theirs, but symbols of the captivity that pride brings to every soul that walks away from divine order. The second heaven revealed the depth of the cosmic struggle between light and shadow. It showed that rebellion, even when it seems victorious for a time, is already defeated. The angels thought they could establish a kingdom apart from God, but their kingdom became a prison. What they gained was not power but shame, not glory but ruin. This vision warns that sin always disguises itself as freedom, while its true end is confinement. Enoch looked upon them with awe and dread, realizing that even beings of great power are not exempt from judgment. If those who once stood in the brightness of heaven could fall so low, how much more must humanity guard itself against pride and rebellion? Their story became a mirror, reflecting the truth that no one rises apart from God, and that all who turn from His order find themselves bound by the very forces they sought to command. The second heaven unsettles the human heart, because it strips away illusions. It reminds us that evil does not triumph, even when it appears strong. Darkness is not ultimate, for it is contained by the justice of God. The chains Enoch saw were not only punishment, but also testimony that rebellion cannot escape divine authority. It is restrained, limited, and destined for its end. Yet even in this dreadful vision, there is a subtle hope. The sight of the fallen shows that evil is not free to reign unchecked. The chains are a declaration that justice rules, that the cosmos is not surrendered to chaos, and that even in shadow, the hand of God holds firm. For those who hear Enoch's vision, the second heaven becomes both a warning against pride and a reassurance that light will prevail. This realm of shadows and chains teaches that obedience is not weakness, but strength, and that true freedom is found only within the order of God. It is a vision that humbles and sobers, pressing upon the soul the weight of eternity and the urgency of faithfulness. When Enoch was lifted into the third heaven, he encountered a vision that both comforted and terrified, for here eternity was revealed in two contrasting forms. On one side stretched the gardens of paradise, a place of beauty beyond description, where trees bore fruit in abundance, where rivers glistened with clarity, and where peace flowed like a living presence. It was a garden untouched by decay, preserved in its perfection, a dwelling place of rest for the righteous. On the other side, however, raged unquenchable flames, a place of torment for the wicked, where anguish burned without end. The garden spoke of promise. It was the return of Eden, the restoration of what had been lost, now eternal and secure. Every tree stood radiant, every leaf shimmered with life, and the air itself carried the fragrance of purity. Enoch recognized in this vision that God had not abandoned his creation to despair, but had prepared a dwelling for those who cling to him. The garden was hope embodied, a declaration that faithfulness leads not into emptiness, but into fullness of joy. Yet the fire on the other side shattered any illusion of easy comfort. It was fierce and relentless, not consuming into nothingness, but sustaining torment. It revealed that eternity without God is not life, but anguish, not freedom, but loss. The flames testified that rejection of divine mercy has consequences that cannot be undone, and that judgment is as real as paradise. What struck Enoch most deeply was that both realms stood together. Paradise and punishment were not distant from one another, but revealed in the same vision, side by side. It was as though eternity itself was declaring that mercy and justice cannot be separated. The same God who preserves life also judges sin, and the same eternity that offers rest also holds judgment. This vision pressed upon Enoch the reality of choice. Life on earth is not neutral. It bends toward one of two destinies. The garden showed the reward of faithfulness, while the fire revealed the cost of rejection. Together they called for decision, urging the heart to turn toward life while time remains. The third heaven also revealed that eternity is not abstract. It is real, tangible, vivid, and unchanging. The trees, the rivers, the flames, all were not symbols alone, but realities waiting to be entered. What Enoch saw was not imagination, but truth, a glimpse of what awaits beyond the veil. For those who hear this vision, the third heaven challenges both fear and hope. It strips away complacency, reminding that judgment is real, while also offering comfort that paradise is prepared for those who walk in faith. It unsettles and encourages, shakes and reassures, forcing every listener to reflect on the path they are walking. The message of the third heaven is unyielding. Eternity holds both joy and anguish, both rest and fire. To know this is not to despair, but to awaken, to live with clarity, and to choose the way of life before the moment of choice is gone. When Enoch ascended into the fifth heaven, he encountered a scene unlike the others. It was not filled with radiant glory, nor with fire or chains, but with silence so heavy that it seemed to press upon the soul. Here he saw the watchers, angelic beings who had turned from obedience and now stood in sorrow, suspended in waiting. Their faces bore grief, their eyes cast downward, and their stillness was more haunting than any cry. The silence of the watchers carried a weight that words could not match. It was not the silence of peace, but the silence of dread, the quiet of those who know what is coming, but cannot escape it. They waited for judgment, bound not with chains of iron, but with the certainty of their fate. The absence of sound spoke louder than thunder, telling Enoch that disobedience carries consequences that cannot be delayed forever. These beings were not yet judged, but they were not free either. They lived in the space between rebellion and its final sentence, a limbo that revealed the patience of divine justice. Their waiting showed that God does not rush to destroy, but also does not forget. Judgment may delay, but it never fails to arrive. For Enoch, the vision of the watchers was deeply unsettling. It showed that rebellion does not only bring outward ruin, but inward sorrow. The watchers were not rejoicing in their defiance. They were crushed by it. Their silence testified that disobedience never leads to joy, but only to emptiness and grief. The fifth heaven revealed a truth that reaches into every human life. Many live in the space between choice and consequence, assuming that the absence of judgment means safety. But the watchers are a reminder that time is not endless, and that the silence of delayed judgment is not freedom but warning. The patience of God is a gift, but it must not be mistaken for forgetfulness. The sorrow of the watchers also showed the cost of choices that echo into eternity. They had turned once, and that turn had marked them forever. Their grief was not only for what awaited them, but for what had been lost, the brightness they once held, the song they once sang, the place they once knew. The silence carried regret deeper than words. For those who reflect on this vision, the fifth heaven calls to urgency. It reminds every heart that time is given not to delay, but to turn back, to seek mercy while mercy can still be found. The watchers waited in silence because their time for repentance had ended. For humanity, the door remains open, but not forever. The silent watchers stand as a solemn warning that choices matter, that disobedience costs more than anyone can bear, and that eternity remembers what life seeks to forget. Their silence echoes across ages, speaking to every listener. Turn now before silence becomes sorrow. As Enoch rose into the sixth heaven, his eyes beheld a realm unlike any he had yet seen. Here the air was not heavy with sorrow nor burning with judgment, but alive with the majesty of divine authority. Thrones were established, each one radiant, shining with brilliance that seemed to pulse with power. Around them stood countless angelic beings, fiery in their appearance, like living flames that moved with precision and order. The sight was overwhelming, not because of terror, but because of the weight of holiness that pressed upon everything. Enoch realized that this was the realm where authority flowed outward, where dominions and powers carried the command of God through creation. The beings here were not silent nor rebellious, but obedient, their movements a symphony of order. Each flame-like angel carried its task with joy. Each throne bore its authority with dignity, and together they revealed a structure of heaven that was far from chaotic. The sixth heaven was the testimony that divine order holds the cosmos together. The fiery host did not burn to destroy, but to serve. Their flames symbolized purity, devotion, and strength, burning with unquenchable energy yet never consuming themselves. They shone with a light that was both fierce and beautiful, reflecting the unending nature of the God they served. They were not free to act according to their own desires, but they delighted in this, for their joy was found in obedience. This vision revealed to Enoch that authority is not oppression when it flows from holiness. The thrones and dominions of this heaven were not harsh rulers, but faithful stewards, reflecting the will of the one who placed them there. Their power was great, but it was always directed by the higher authority of God. In this way, Enoch saw that true strength is found not in independence, but in alignment with divine order. The sixth heaven teaches that the universe is not sustained by chance, but by structure, and that structure is rooted in obedience. Just as the stars move in their appointed paths, so too do these fiery beings serve within their appointed roles. There is no confusion, no rebellion, no wasted effort. Everything moves in harmony, like an unending hymn of order. For Enoch, this vision was a reminder that what happens in heaven reflects into life on earth. When people resist authority, chaos grows, but when they live in harmony with divine order, peace takes root. The fiery hosts showed him that obedience is not weakness, but the very strength that sustains creation. The sixth heaven also inspired awe because it revealed the majesty of God's rule. The thrones and powers had authority, yet none of them claimed it as their own. Their glory was reflected glory, their power a trust given to them. Even the greatest among them bowed to the higher throne, acknowledging that all dominion belongs to God alone. For those who reflect on this vision, the sixth heaven becomes a call to live in alignment with divine order. It urges the heart to embrace obedience, not as a burden, but as a path to strength and harmony. The fiery hosts and radiant thrones remind us that the universe itself is ordered by God, and that true life comes when the soul aligns with that eternal structure. From the ordered majesty of the sixth heaven, Enoch was carried upward again, and what he saw filled him with both trembling and wonder. The seventh heaven was not only a place of power, but the very threshold of glory. Here, angelic hosts gathered in countless numbers, their voices rising in worship without ceasing. The sound was not chaotic noise, but a perfect harmony, as though every voice carried its own part in an endless song that never grew weary. The light in this heaven was brighter than anything Enoch had seen before. It was not the cold brilliance of stars, but living light, radiant and pure, flowing from a source so near that Enoch felt overwhelmed. He realized he was approaching the very presence of God's throne, the heart of majesty itself. Every breath of this place was filled with awe. Every sound carried the weight of holiness. The angels here were clothed in reverence. Their joy was radiant, but it was not casual joy. It was the joy of those who stand near perfect holiness and live only to magnify it. Their worship was not forced but natural, as if their very existence demanded praise. To be in this heaven was to be surrounded by devotion that had no end, by awe that never diminished. For Enoch, the seventh heaven was almost unbearable in its beauty. He felt small, unworthy, yet also drawn near, as if the very light that overwhelmed him was also inviting him closer. The mixture of terror and wonder pressed upon his soul, reminding him that holiness is not something to be approached lightly, but also not something to be feared in despair. It is a fire that consumes sin, but comforts those who walk in faith. This vision taught Enoch that worship is not an occasional act, but the very heartbeat of creation. The angels did not sing because they were commanded, but because worship was the natural outpouring of their nearness to God. They could not help but glorify, for every part of them was filled with awareness of His majesty. The seventh heaven also revealed the closeness of the eternal throne. Enoch was no longer at the outer veils of mystery, but at the doorstep of divine glory. To see this was to understand that the entire journey through the heavens was moving toward one center, one ultimate reality, the presence of God. Everything else existed in relation to that presence. The awe of the seventh heaven was both terrifying and comforting. It terrified because no impurity could survive there, and yet it comforted because purity itself was life and joy. Enoch felt the weight of holiness pressing upon him, but he also sensed the invitation hidden within it, the call to draw near with humility and faith. This heaven reveals to all who hear of it that approaching God is both the greatest fear and the greatest hope of the soul. To draw near is to be undone, yet also to be remade. The seventh heaven shows that the path of faith leads not into emptiness, but into glory, into a majesty so overwhelming that even eternity cannot exhaust its wonder. When Enoch ascended into the eighth heaven, his eyes were lifted to behold the stars, fixed in their places, burning with steady brilliance. Here the mysteries of time and order were revealed, the movements of constellations and the seasons they governed. Each star was like a sentinel, placed by divine wisdom, marking the boundaries of days, years, and ages. Their order was not random, but purposeful, each one fulfilling a role in the grand design of creation. The eighth heaven was filled with wonder because it displayed mysteries hidden from human understanding. From earth, the stars appear as distant lights scattered in the sky, but Enoch saw them as part of a vast structure woven into the rhythm of time itself. Their courses were appointed, their paths unchanging, revealing that creation is not guided by chance, but by eternal wisdom. Enoch understood that these mysteries belonged not to humanity's control, but to God alone. The stars were beyond the reach of human hands, their order untouchable by mortal power. This was a reminder that life itself is filled with hidden purposes that lie in the hands of the Creator. To know all mysteries is not given to man, but to trust the one who holds them is the path of peace. The eighth heaven was also a place of awe because it revealed the balance between the visible and the hidden. The stars are seen by every eye, yet their true meaning is concealed. They declare time, mark seasons, and guide the rhythm of life, yet their deepest mysteries remain locked in the wisdom of God. Enoch saw that what is hidden is not absent, but reserved for divine purposes. For Enoch, this vision called forth trust. The fixed stars spoke of certainty, of promises that do not change, of times and seasons that unfold according to divine order. Even when life on earth seems unstable, the stars remind the soul that God's hand is steady and that His plan moves forward without fail. This heaven teaches that destiny is not an accident. The hidden mysteries are not secrets meant to frustrate, but truths too great for human minds to fully contain. They invite faith, urging the heart to rest in the assurance that the one who orders the stars also orders the days of every life. The eighth heaven also humbles, for it reminds humanity that creation is larger than understanding. The stars, vast and uncountable, shine as a testimony to the greatness of God. They proclaim that eternity is filled with wonders beyond comprehension, and that to trust God is to walk in the safety of His order even when the path is hidden. In this way, the eighth heaven becomes a call to wonder and trust. It teaches that what is unseen is not uncertain, but firmly held in divine wisdom. The fixed stars and hidden mysteries reveal that the universe is a tapestry woven by God's hand, and that every life is a thread within that eternal design. When Enoch was lifted into the ninth heaven, he saw something that touched his heart more deeply than the visions of fire or stars. Here he witnessed the prayers of the righteous rising like incense, carried upward by angelic hands, brought before the throne of God. The sight revealed that every whispered word, every cry of the soul, every hidden plea does not vanish into the air, but ascends into eternity. The angels in this heaven moved with reverence, carrying the petitions of humanity as though they were treasures. Their faces shone with purpose, for they knew that what they carried was precious to God. Enoch understood that prayer is not small, but powerful, and that not a single word of faith is ever lost. This vision filled him with comfort, for it revealed that the cries of the weak, the oppressed, and the faithful are heard in heaven. Even when earth seems silent, heaven listens. The ninth heaven testified that prayer bridges the gap between the finite and the infinite, between human weakness and divine strength. The incense rising was a powerful image, for it showed that prayer is not merely sound but fragrance, filling the heavens with sweetness. It revealed that the heart lifted in faith pleases God, and that He treasures the offerings of those who seek Him. For Enoch, this heaven was a vision of hope. He had seen chains, fire, sorrow, and judgment, but here he saw mercy and attentiveness. He saw that the heavens are not distant from human struggle, but intimately connected through prayer. Every plea rises upward, and every cry is received. This vision also revealed the role of angelic intercession. The angels did not replace prayer, but carried it, honored it, magnified it. They stood as servants of God, ensuring that the voices of the faithful reached the throne. This revealed the vast network of care woven through the cosmos, where even the smallest prayer finds its way into the presence of God. The ninth heaven teaches that nothing spoken in faith is wasted. Every word is recorded, every sigh remembered, every cry treasured. The vision calls humanity to prayer, reminding them that even when they feel unheard, their voices resound in heaven. For those who reflect on this vision, the ninth heaven becomes an encouragement to never cease in prayer. It is a reminder that God listens, that heaven responds, and that prayer is not weakness, but the greatest power given to humanity. Finally, Enoch was lifted into the highest realm, the 10th heaven, and here words could scarcely describe what he beheld. Before him stretched a throne unlike any other, radiant with light so pure and so overwhelming that even the sun seemed dim by comparison. The throne was alive with glory, encircled by unapproachable brightness, and upon it sat the Almighty, whose presence filled all things. The light was not ordinary light, it was living, eternal, immeasurable. It did not simply shine but pierced, revealing every thought, every hidden part of the soul. To stand before it was to be undone, stripped of all pretense, and yet also to be embraced by a love beyond comprehension. Enoch trembled, yet he did not flee, for the same light that terrified also drew him in. Around the throne, countless angelic hosts bowed, their worship rising like waves that never ceased. Their songs were overwhelming, their reverence unending, yet even their glory was nothing compared to the one seated upon the throne. Enoch realized that all creation, from the lowest realm to the highest, found its meaning here, in the presence of the Almighty. This vision was both fearsome and comforting. Fearsome, because no impurity could survive before such holiness. Comforting, because this holiness was not distant, but welcoming, extending life to those who walk in faith. To stand before the throne was to know that judgment and mercy are not opposites, but united in the presence of God. The 10th heaven revealed that all things find their end and their beginning in God. Every chain, every fire, every garden, every star, every prayer, all flowed toward this throne, and all found their fulfillment here. The visions Enoch had seen were not isolated, but parts of a greater whole, each one leading toward this ultimate revelation. For Enoch, standing before the throne was the climax of his journey. He had walked through veils, shadows, gardens, stars, and silence, but here he stood at the source. The throne revealed that eternity is not merely a place but a presence, not merely a destination but a relationship with the one who reigns forever. This heaven teaches that the ultimate reality is not fear or sorrow, but the majesty of God. It reminds the soul that all creation bends toward Him, that all life is sustained by Him, and that eternity is the gift of His presence. To stand before the throne is both the greatest terror and the greatest hope, a vision that binds together fear and joy in one overwhelming truth. The 10th heaven leaves humanity with a single call: to live in light of eternity, to prepare for the day when every soul will stand before the face of the Almighty. It is a vision that shakes, comforts, warns, and invites, reminding that the ultimate destiny of life is not found in shadows or silence, but in the eternal presence of God. When Enoch was taken into the 10th and final heaven, every vision he had seen before found its meaning. He had walked through veils and shadows, through prisons and gardens, through silence, fire, stars, and songs. Yet none of those realms compared to the overwhelming majesty of the throne he now beheld. Here, in the highest heaven, he stood before the face of the Almighty. The throne towered above all creation, radiant with a brilliance no words could capture. Light poured out like an ocean, a living radiance that filled everything it touched. It was not cold or distant, but alive and present, and it revealed the truth of all things. In its brightness there was no place for deception, no room for pretense. To stand here was to be fully known, fully seen, stripped of every disguise, and yet embraced by a love deeper than all understanding. Enoch saw the hosts of angels gathered in reverence, their voices raised in unending praise. Their songs did not grow weary, nor did they lose their strength. Each voice carried power, yet all together formed a single harmony that magnified the one seated on the throne. The throne was not only a place of authority, but the very heart of eternity, the source from which all life flowed. This vision was both the most terrifying and the most comforting of all. Terrifying because the holiness of God is absolute, and no impurity can survive in His presence. Comforting because His holiness is not a barrier but an invitation for those who walk in faith. For Enoch, it was the climax of his journey, the moment when every fear and every hope met in one overwhelming reality. He realized that every heaven he had passed through was only a reflection of this final vision. The veil of the first heaven, the chains of the second, the gardens of the third, the thrones of the sixth, the worship of the seventh, the mysteries of the eighth, the prayers of the ninth, all pointed here. The throne was the center, the meaning, the end, and the beginning. Nothing in creation was apart from it, for all things found their fulfillment in the one who reigns forever. The light of the throne was not only judgment, but also mercy. It revealed the terror of holiness, but it also offered the eternal hope of life. For those who rejected God, this light was fire, unbearable and consuming. For those who clung to Him, it was paradise, joy without end, the eternal rest of the soul. The throne brought together what seemed impossible: fear and comfort, judgment and mercy, glory and humility. Enoch's vision of the 10th heaven was not meant only for himself. It was a testimony, preserved for those who would come after him, so that they might know the truth of eternity. The heavens are real, the judgment is certain, and the glory of God is beyond imagination. His journey calls every heart to prepare, to live with eternity in mind, to remember that one day every soul will stand before the throne. The 10th heaven teaches that life is not an endless wandering, but a journey with a destination. That destination is not merely a place but a presence, the presence of the Almighty. To live in light of this truth is to live with clarity, with humility, and with hope. For in the end, everything bends toward the throne, and everything finds its meaning in the one who reigns upon it. Enoch's journey through the 10 heavens is more than an ancient vision. It is a map of eternity, showing both the terror of judgment and the comfort of divine promise. His testimony is a reminder that life is not confined to the world we see, but stretches into realms far greater, where choices echo forever. It is an invitation to walk faithfully, to seek the garden of paradise, to lift prayers that rise like incense, and to prepare for the day when every soul will stand before the face of the Almighty. If this message has touched your heart and given you something to reflect upon, I invite you to subscribe to this channel so you will not miss the next journey into the mysteries of faith. Please like this video if it has encouraged or challenged you, and share it with your friends and loved ones so they too can walk through these visions and find hope in them. I would also love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let us know what stood out to you most from Enoch's journey. Your words may inspire someone else who is listening.